Welcome everybody, and we're glad you're here. We got 12 people on the call, and at any time, if you have a question about anything that I say, just chime in, unmute your mic, turn on your camera, and ask your question. If you have a question, so does everybody else, and maybe they're just not asking it. So feel free to jump in, interrupt me. Perfectly okay. We're all veterans here, and we'll be just fine. I promise. All right. So job search strategies. Okay. So we are still serving veterans. We help veterans every day to find jobs. We're a nonprofit organization, Huntsville, Alabama. These are some of our partners and uh, and benefactors. So Call of Duty is our number one um, donor for what we do. They pay for about half of what we do for the entire year. If you're familiar with the video game, that's them, Call of Duty Endowment. We're partnered with the United Way and CFC and the USO and a bunch of other organizations you may or may not have heard of um, in getting the work done. Everybody here at Still Serving Veterans who you would work with is a veteran. I'm a retired Navy chief, 24 years. We are headquartered in Huntsville, Alabama, but we work everywhere. We say anywhere there's internet and veterans is where we work. So it doesn't matter if you're getting out of the military in Germany or Hawaii or Korea or anywhere here in the US. We are happy to work with you. We will figure out the time zones. And over 10,000 vets hired since 2006. It's actually much higher than that today, but we're in a new year, so I don't know what the new number is, but um, quite a few people served at this point. This is me. Believe it or not, it's not a yesterday or today picture. But I'm a formally trained business coach, personal coach, executive coach. I've owned my own coaching agency for the last 10 years. I used to run the TAP program at Navarre Logistics in Pax River, Maryland. Ran that for a little over a year. I'm also a licensed PMP, program management professional through the Program Management Institute. As I said, I owned my own business for the last 10 years, but from the time that I got out of the Navy in 2008 until I started my business in 2014, I was a contractor, program manager for a local billion-dollar IT company. All the programs that I've worked were Navy programs, primarily out of Pax River, but we deployed to anywhere there were Navy installations. And I'm very active community volunteer. I'm a Freemason. I work with a lot of nonprofits and basically living the good life every day. So that's what we're going to try and help you guys to do. So, first thing is in the job search, uh, people coming out of the military tend to deal with what do I want to do? What do I want to be? What's the right title and job for my skill set? And they come out and they hone in on just a couple of jobs. Very often, the majority of the folks that we see will either want to be a program manager or a an HR specialist. And unfortunately, we don't get the skills in the military that sets people up to be those things. We get lots of experience in a lot of different fields that have absolute applicability in civilian world, but when those are the two titles that you hone in on, then you really do yourself a disservice. I was up until a half hour ago talking to an Air Force E7 who is up around at a base around St. Louis and getting ready to retire in November. And he honed in on program management, but what we call a program in the military is very, very different from what they call a program in civilian world. So it doesn't just fold over directly. Although 20 plus years in the military, you spend a lot of time running programs, but they're military programs. So we got to figure out what are the skills that you have, and how can we make them marketable in the civilian world. So, one way that we do that is in going through TAP, you had to develop a resume, or you will have to develop a resume if you haven't gotten there yet. And in developing that resume, a great resource for that is to go to your evaluations and your award write-ups and pull out all those bullets. And then, what command were you at? What was your job title? What were the dates that you were there? Where is it geographically located? And then what were the high level duties and responsibilities of that job? And then from your evaluations and your awards, you pull out the bullets that made you, amazing, at least on paper, while you were there. And then from there, we develop a resume that covers your entire military career. If you've been out of the military for a while, we just extend that into the civilian world. You just often don't have valuations and awards to go from to pull those bullets out. But it's the same thing. What were the actions that you took and the results that you achieved that made you indispensable in your job there at that organization? And you can't be shy. It's important to to be willing to brag a little bit on the work that you did and how you really made a difference at that command. It's helpful to think about who were your peers and how did you compete against them. If the boss comes in and says, I have the opportunity to give a promotion to one of you or to elevate you to this better role, um, give me an argument as to why you're better than the other person and why you should have that job. And that's your mentality. When in developing your resume, that's your primary marketing document against some other candidate or one of your peers for promotion or for hiring into a particular role. And so you want to think in terms, why am I the best person for this job? Why am I better than that person is for this job? What am I going to bring to the company that's going to allow me to excel in this role? How does my past experience at this location help prepare me to excel in this role that I'm interested in having? So that's kind of the thought process you go through in developing your resume. In choosing the jobs, you take all of that and roll it up together, and it's much easier when you're working with an organization like ours because we've done 1,000 plus of them every year in one-to-one conversations. But you know, what do you want to do is a primary question, but also where do you want to do it? If you want to be a boat builder, but you want to live in Oklahoma, then you're going to be really limited in the size and type of boat that you're going to be building in Oklahoma. If you want to be building big clipper ships and cruise ships, then Oklahoma is not going to be the place to do it. So, what do you want to do combined with where do you want to do it? Can you stay in the location that you're retiring from? Do you want to go be closer to your family or your spouse's family? Um, or, like I did when I retired in 2008, the company that hired me was home based in Huntsville, Alabama. And I said, well, it's January, but my wife's a school teacher and my son's in the first grade. But as soon as the school year's over, I'm open for anything. You want me to move to Huntsville, Alabama? I'm there. So let's do that. So maybe you make a decision that, you've been away from family for this long because you're in the military. Maybe you go where the money is or the opportunity. So, another thing to think about from what do you want to do? Where do you want to do it? Who do you want to do it with is an important question. Do you want to continue to work with military people? Do you want to work with people of your own age or of your own demographic or of your own culture? Do you want to work in a group team environment or do you want independent autonomous work? Is super important to consider as well. You want to be inside or outside? My son recently got out of the Marine Corps, and he wants a job that's going to allow him to be outside and work with a lot of autonomy. Great. I wanted a job that had me in a team environment, but the opportunity to work um, independent, so I'm not under the thumb of a supervisor all the time. And I was able to do that. So all of these things need to be taken into consideration to determine how happy you're going to be in that first job outside of the military. Because job hopping is horrible. To get out and to find the wrong fit because you failed to ask the right questions in the job search, or you got to the point where you were so desperate to find a job that you kind of take anything just so you get a paycheck, which happens. It's nothing wrong with that. It's just circumstances got you to that situation. But sometimes you just take the job you can get until you get the job you want. Pay, of course, is an issue. When you look at your total pay and compensation at your last job in the military, your last rank in the military, what was that? It was me as an E7 coming out of the Navy in 2008. My total pay and compensation was about $87,000, and that includes health care, and that includes 30 days off a year, and cost of living in the DC area and all that. So that's I needed to at least make that pay level or more. So I wanted that minimum in order to pay the bills. But what did I really want to be comfortable, and what was my stretch goal? And I would love to make this amount. I don't know if I can get that high, but that's what I'm thinking my upper limit is. So when you're in the interview or when that recruiter calls you and says, I need to know what is your expectation for compensation in this role, you can say, well, I got out of the Navy at 86,000, 87,000, and I figure, with my experience in education, I could probably get maybe as high as 120,000. So I guess it's 90 to 120, somewhere in there. And that's a big spread, isn't it? But that gives them, at least they'll know if they're in the ballpark or not. When you get further into the interviewing process and you're in front of the hiring manager that's going to make a decision whether or not to start the onboarding process, send you an offer letter, then they're going to ask the same question, but they don't want a $40,000, $30,000 spread. They want to know, what do you need to do this job? And once you're to that point, you should have asked the questions to know what is the scope of the work. How much responsibility, how much work is this going to be? Most of our cases, they're not hiring us hourly, they're hiring us on salary. Well, what does that mean? How many hours a week do you really want out of me? Does everybody work 40 hours a week and then we go home? Or should I expect more like 50, 60, maybe sometimes 70, 80 hours in order to satisfy the customer, satisfy the company, and earn that paycheck? A $100,000 paycheck is nice if you're working 40 hours a week, but I don't know a lot of people on salary that work 40 hours a week. If you're working 80 hours a week, then which some companies, if you're working for Tesla or Toyota, an 80-hour week sometimes might not be out of the question. In which case, that $100,000 paycheck just became working two jobs at $50,000 a piece. And then you got to make a decision. Is that worth it to you? Is that what you really signed up for and expected? So all these questions need to be asked, in determining what kind of jobs you want to go after. How do I translate what I did in the military? Again, there's great tools out there for that. And if you're working with us, we're going to rewrite your resume for you. So we'll make that super easy. You don't have to take all of the jargon out of there, but you need to take enough jargon out so that it resonates with the recruiter. But it's okay to have some in there. If you worked on aircraft, I worked on E2s and F-14s and F-18s and all the helicopters, and the civilians know what every aircraft destination is. No, at the end of the day, they know that you worked on aircraft and you were responsible for large dollar amounts and a number of people, and had big responsibilities and had to be reliable for long periods of time. That's what's important to them in a lot of cases. So you don't have to take all of the military speak out of there. It just needs to be to some extent understandable. If you can hand it to your spouse who is non-military, or a friend or neighbor who is non-military, and they can read it and with a reasonable degree of accuracy understand what you do, then that's all that's necessary. I do encourage you to keep your job titles, use your military job titles on your resume. Don't try and equate it to some civilian level, because we can't do it. We're just not good at it. I don't know any job titles in the military that say senior manager or anything like that, or CEO or president, vice president. They don't exist. And when military members try and equate to that coming out of the door, they do a bad job. Senior manager in civilian world, depending on the company, may have an expectation of 30 years of work experience behind you in that environment. So you're bringing 30 years of experience on a particular task and with a particular type of customer using particular types of softwares or tooling and things like that. So just to say that you're a senior manager because you're 20 years in the military doesn't necessarily translate. So there's more to it, and you're just better off using your military titles and explaining the number of people and the dollars of equipment and the amounts of inventory and the geographics, diversity that you worked in, and let them figure out at what level you need to be hired at. It's exactly how when you're writing a federal resume, how they're going to do it. They want you to explain a lot about all your work experience, and they'll make a decision of whether or not you're a GS-11 or a GS-5 or GS-15 or whatever. And then it's important to know when do you gotta start making applications. Generally speaking, 8 weeks out is a good time to start making applications. 8 weeks from when you want to start working. In many cases, you can put in an application, have an interview the next week, and have a job offer the same week or the next week. And so 2 to 3 weeks is reasonable, but it might take you a couple of hundred applications, literally a couple of hundred applications, to get to the point where you have 15 interviews and 5 job offers. But if you're treating your job search as a job, like we advise you to, then you can do 5 applications in the morning, 5 in the afternoon, do that 5 days a week, only work 40 hours on your job search or less. And if you're doing that, that's 50 applications a week. And within 4 to 6 weeks at the most, really we say 2 to 4 weeks, you should have had multiple job offers and have a few jobs to choose from. Any questions so far? There's a bunch of information dumped on you all at once. If you got a question, ask a question here. All right, doing good, moving on. Again, don't be afraid to interrupt me. It's just fine. I do this all the time. So everybody will be okay. So myths about the civilian world. Everybody wants to hire veterans. Not everybody wants to hire veterans. We are bulls in the china shop when we come out of the military. I was a Navy chief from Boston with 24 years of military experience. And I worked that first 6 weeks in Pax River, Maryland, and then instantly moved to Huntsville, Alabama. And Navy chief from Boston with my Navy attitude and my Boston way of getting things done did not resonate well in North Alabama, I promise you. And so I really, really struggled. And then compounded by they didn't know I was coming. So my new vice president walked me into my executive manager's office and said, "Cheryl, this is Dave. Dave, this is Cheryl. Cheryl, Dave now works for you, and the 26 people who used to work for you now work for Dave. So Dave is your only direct report." And I said, "Hi, what do we got to change?" Not really, but not far from that. And it went downhill from there for the next 6 months. and only very slowly went uphill from there for the following 6 months. It was a very, very difficult first year, but I lived through it. So not everybody wants to hire veterans because we come in with a way of, you know, what is the problem? How do we approach the problem? When do we have to get the problem fixed by? What are the resources I have at my disposal to fix the problem? What's been done and didn't work in the past? Let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. And sometimes it involves some trial and error. And meanwhile, people are wondering, what just happened. So we can be very disruptive in a work environment. So for that reason, not everybody wants to hire veterans. And then there's all the stigmas of, does this person have PTSD? Are they a combat veteran? What kind of trauma have they been through? Are they, you know, when they get mad, are they going to freak out and go postal in my workspace? Or, all these negative stereotypes that come along with military members. And you only have to watch TV one night in a week before you can see 20 bad stereotypes of veterans that get broadcast all the time. So again, not everybody wants to hire veterans. We just do better than civilians is not true. We on average, generally speaking, military uh, veterans have a better work ethic. They have the ability to work in a diverse atmosphere much better. They can be given an order, ask a few questions for clarification, and then roll out and do it, and then come back and say, "All right, I'm done. What do I do next?" Um, Better time management, better personal management. A lot of things are just better, and for someone coming out of the military, even after just 4 years, um, than the average civilian. And I would argue that against anybody who would disagree with me on that. But civilians don't believe it. And in a lot of cases, the civilians that you might go work with might have been in that business for 30 years, 15, 20, 30 years, and they know that business. They know their customer. They know their product. They know the culture. They know the company. They know how to get things done and the bureaucracy and who to schmooze and whatever to get things done in the organization. You don't know any of that. You had likely, through your time in the military, hopped jobs every year and a half to 3 years, had a different chain of command every year and a half to 3 years, and civilians just don't operate that way. So you could run circles around any civilian trying to do it in your environment often, but they're going to beat you every day coming out of the military trying to do it in their environment. So don't make that assumption. They will love you for your experience. You don't need a degree. I tried that. I didn't have a degree. I don't have a degree today. I got very lucky that I had a company that hired me with my 24 years of military experience, took away 4 years in lieu of a degree, and hired me with credit for a degree and 20 years of experience, and hired me as a senior manager. Um, that doesn't happen very often. I had 2 years of experience with their product, with their people, and their culture, and their environment. I knew the government contracting side very well because I had been running contracts from the government side, and that's very valuable experience to have in a contracting company. I had lots and lots of connections because I had worked at NAVAIR headquarters, and I had top secret clearance. So all those things made me very hireable. So they were willing to make some concessions on the degree. These days, to get hired with a government contractor, the government sponsor, is going to require a degree often, and almost always requires the security clearance be in hand before you get hired, which means you got to have it and be doing it all before they can hire you to do it all for them, and that makes it very difficult. I work with veterans all day, every day, trying to get them hired into contracting environments, and it is difficult if they don't have a degree and have security clearance already. but we can do it. We just got to find the right niche. They'll love you for your soft skills. They will love you and hate you for your soft skills. They'll love you in theory because, man, we need somebody with some leadership and some reliability who's going to show up and doesn't call in sick every other day, and tells me straight what's wrong and how to do it, instead of me having to figure out the political correctness code of what they're trying to tell me and all this. And um, but if you're a veteran working in an environment with a lot of veterans, they've already figured that out. If you're a veteran trying to work in an environment that doesn't have a lot of veterans, you want to get a job at Amazon or Walmart warehouse and things like that. General manufacturing, Toyota and auto manufacturing, things like that, that aren't military centric, don't have a lot of veterans, then you might, you know, they will eventually love you, but on day one, you will alienate your peers and coworkers because you got it. You are a leader. You know how to show up on time. You know how to be reliable. You know how to ask the right questions for clarification and then go out and get stuff done. You know how to short circuit redundant plans and make things better, stronger, faster, and more efficient in a way that they just don't often do in the civilian world. So they'll love you eventually for that stuff. Your managers will, but your coworkers will be intimidated by it. They'll love you for your rank, medals, network, etc. They don't care about your rank so much unless you're, colonel or above maybe, and you bring some influence and a good network with you. They just don't care about your medals unless it's like Medal of Honor, something like that. I've got 8 personal medals. They don't care anything about any of them. And I work in an office full of uh, veterans, and I'm just gray here. Everybody's gray here because we've all got medals on the chest of our uniform sitting in our closet back home, but nobody at work cares about that. Rank is important because it has a little bit of influence ability that comes with it. That's nice. Um, at the higher levels, '06 and above, um, they come with uh, an ability to utilize their authority in a way that the lower ranks often don't have. So that's nice. Mostly what they love, somebody who's been in for 20, 30 years, they love your network. Because if you're coming out of an environment like I was at Navarre headquarters, and you're going to a contract house that wants to do a lot of contract work in that environment, then they love to have somebody who comes in, knows 200 people back at Navarre headquarters, and knows exactly who to call, pick up a phone, and get stuff done. So they do love you for your network, to the extent that you have one. So if you have no network and you have some time before you're getting out of the military, get on LinkedIn. Uh, Go be at rooms full of people in your environment, and meet contractors and meet recruiters and meet hiring managers. Go to job fairs. Be on LinkedIn in your peer groups. Participate in the conversation. Ask questions. Let people know that you're getting out, but build that network for as much as you can from the time that you know when you're getting out, which may be a couple of years before you actually get out, all the way up until you're sitting in the job that you're getting paid to do. And then you can back off your network and concentrate on the job at hand. I can get a job anywhere. Well, not necessarily. There are depressed markets all over the country that just aren't hiring. Here in Huntsville, the veteran community enjoys about 1.5% unemployment. So if you're a veteran trying to get a job here in Huntsville, chances are pretty good if you come with a reasonable resume. Um, but if you're going to Detroit, Michigan, it might be a lot more difficult. Needs to be jobs available. Needs to be jobs available for the jobs that you can fill and do competently with skill. Um, and those are the two big things. And then they need to be willing to entertain all those other things. That you're a veteran, new coming back to the civilian world. Bring a level of controversy and um, you know what's the word I'm thinking of? Distraction in the work center, in the work environment. So, some things to consider. Can I get a job anywhere? Probably not. I literally had somebody who wanted to do a job in the middle of the country that required them to be at the beach. And, it just doesn't work. You got to be realistic about that stuff. And really rural environments. If you want to go back home and be close to family, but your job is a munitions expert or an explosives expert or a government program management expert, and you want to go live in some rural community in the Midwest, there just aren't going to be jobs there for it. So you got to take what you do know how to do with leadership and operations and streamlining processes and reinvent yourself to say, I can be a great operations manager at just about any environment using these specific skills from where I'm coming from and go do a good job. So I can get a job anywhere. Sure. Can you get the job that you thought you were going to be plugged into? Might be more difficult. TAP taught me all I need to know. TAP is much better in the last 12 to 18 months than it has ever been before that. Totally different from the TAP program that I ran at NAVAIR headquarters. Um, the Department of Labor ran a pilot program called the Employment Navigator Pilot Program, which we have been a partner with. They ran it for a year. It was supposed to be a 5-year program. It ran for a little over a year and got picked up as an actual program because it was so stellar. And they brought on close to 50 partner companies, veteran service organizations like ours, and we met every month and we talked about best practices and how do we get to veterans, how do we help them do the job search, how do we write resumes, what do we teach them in these various lectures that we do, how do we help to make their transition out of the service so much better so that they can get on with their life and taking care of their family and not have somebody committing suicide every 22 minutes and how do we fix all these problems. And so we got together and talked about all these best practices and lessons learned every month, and they were like very very quick to adopt all these best practices into the TAP programs, and they would test things and see how they worked and keep a mountain of statistics. And as a result, the TAP program has gotten worlds better. And I'm happy to say that we've been able to be part of that. So, but did they teach you everything they need to? No. Sometimes they drop the ball. Sometimes you're at a command that has a lot of people getting out, so you're just a number. So the one-to-one help is missing. Everybody's needs are a little bit different. My son is um, uh, has a need for a little bit more direct attention because of his learning style and because some of the things that he went through in the Marine Corps. And so as a result, he might have benefited from a little bit more personal attention from the TAP program. But who has time for that? When you're one of 1,000 Marines getting out in the next quarter at Camp Lejeune, nobody has time for that. And then on day 1+1, after you get out, they've moved on, and you get handed off to us veteran service organizations, and hopefully you connect to with a good one. So TAP taught you all you need to know? No. So avail yourself of the various resources out there. Still Serving Veterans, Hire Our Heroes, Disabled American Veterans, American Legion. There's great organizations, Combined Arms in Texas, Recruit Military. is probably the best job board there is out there, Recruit Military, um, for a listing of 450,000 open available jobs today for veterans. So, a huge advocate of Recruit Military. Um, so, there's more to the transition and getting out than what TAP taught you. And finally, I have this certification. Uh, in the last couple of years, the military branches were pushing certifications. Get this resiliency certification. Get this, project master certification through Google. Don't do that. Uh, get any of a number of these computer centric environment, IT centric certifications. The best thing you can do is look up the top 10 jobs that you would most love to have within a category, like project management, operations management, logistics management, supply chain management, cybersecurity, IT management. What are the certifications in that silo that are required for people who want to be successful in that community? And then go take time to get those certifications so that when you make an application, you're not only applying with your experience, whatever education you have, but you can say, I have these licenses and certifications that are key to people who want to be successfully hired into this community. SHRM membership and certifications for the HR community, super important. So, so know what those certifications are and go after them. There's while you're still in, there's onward to opportunity, and even after you get out, onward to opportunity, and the veteran, I forget what's called, VR&E program. The acronym slips me at the moment. Veteran Readiness and Employment organization is really helpful in helping you to retrain and gain new certifications and degrees. I mean, they would help me all the way up. If I wanted to go be a doctor and showed an aptitude for that, then they would be with me all the way up to getting my PhD and being able to go out and do that kind of work. So great programs out there. You just got to find them. But unfortunately, some of those certifications, although they would be helpful in that environment or community, they may not be exactly what you need to get in there. Okay, slide 2. Who's got any questions on any of that information? Questions, comments? Who knew you're going to be slammed with this much information all at once? Okay. So avoid self-sabotage. How do you keep from sabotaging yourself? First of all, you work with coaches and counselors who are going to encourage you along, give you good advice. There's lots and lots of advice out there, but not all of it's good. Recruiters will often say, this is a great resume or this is a bad resume for this reason, but some of those recruiters only know their company, only know what they were taught by their mentor when they got to that one company, only know what they learned from the instructors at school who'd been teaching it for 20 years and had never gone back to re-educate and improve themselves. So it's a very narrow knowledge base that a lot of that advice comes from. Sometimes it's only from, in my experience, from my job search. Well, my experience, my job search, I didn't have to write a resume until I was 54 because I didn't need one coming out of the military, except that they told me to write one to put with my package. But it wasn't like it was key and central in my getting hired. So truly didn't have a real deal interview and need for a resume until I was 54. And so to say on my all my work experience, this is my advice. Today it's a little bit different, but a lot of times the advice that you're getting is not well-rounded advice with a good knowledge base. So, okay, avoid self-sabotage. Embrace LinkedIn. Build your network, like we talked about a little bit on LinkedIn. Get out there, have a great profile, use some of the checklists that are available for auditing your LinkedIn profile. I was looking for a book. I got a great book on it, but it keeps getting taken off my shelf because it's such a good book. So have a complete LinkedIn profile, work with somebody, an organization that can help you to build it out, and so it represents you well. I've known lots of people who have been hired just because they had a great LinkedIn profile. They made it easy for recruiters to find them. Recruiters could read through their profile and see that they had just the right work experience that they were looking for. They'd get a message or an email um, from a recruiter saying, reviewed your LinkedIn profile, saw that you're open to work. I would love to interview you. I myself have had many requests for an interview based on my LinkedIn profile. I have a very complete and well built LinkedIn profile. If you want to see an example of a good one, and I've had many offers for interviews, just based on my LinkedIn profile. Tailor your resume, sort of. If your resume is a good representation of your full work history, then you can have a master resume. And when you apply to a particular job, your resume should be tailored to that community. But then your cover letter can be very tightly, very specifically tailored to the job description. And so that cover letter becomes the document that marries the job description to your resume. So we show people how to use free tools that are out there to help you craft extremely good cover letters to become the first page of your resume and to submit that with your application for jobs. And that is some secret sauce there. When we started doing that, we made that change about a year ago, and people went from job searching for 2-3 months to job searching for 2-4 weeks. Extremely impressive. Appearances, first impressions matter. If you're in the job search and a recruiter calls and says, "Hey, just saw your resume. Can you jump on Zoom real quick? I got a hiring manager available who's interested in talking to you. He's ready to make a hiring decision, but we need to do a quick interview. Can you jump on Zoom?" And you're sitting there, you need a shave, you're in your pajamas, you haven't had a haircut in a long time, your background looks terrible. All those things can tank your interview because you weren't ready for an interview. So if you are in the job search, answer your phone, answer email, answer texts. Um, when a recruiter calls and says, can you do a quick interview? Be prepared and always be ready for an interview. Do you have to be in a suit and tie 24/7? No, but during regular working hours, at least well groomed and in clean, presentable clothing for the type of job that you're interested in. Polo shirt's perfectly okay if you're just getting a call. Even if you want to be a professional program manager or business executive, you're not at work, but at least this is what the person normally looks like when they're off work. That's a good representative for our organization. Then that's fine. Doesn't have to be a suit and tie. Keep answers short and complete. Answer the question that was asked, but don't offer more information than is necessary to answer their question. The first responsibility for a recruiter, for a hiring manager, for somebody conducting an interview, excuse me, is to be friendly and get you to relax and get you answering questions and offering information, which is important. You want to seem to be friendly but competent. So when someone's deciding, do we want to hire this person? Do we not? They seem like a good person. I'd be happy to have lunch with them or meet them at the break area. Have a cup of coffee with them, get to know them a little bit. happy to work shoulder to shoulder with them. I'd be perfectly happy to put them in front of my customers and know with confidence that they're not going to embarrass me or my organization or the company. So that's great. But it's possible to get too friendly and too comfortable and too familiar, and you start giving your opinions on things, on political environment, or you know whatever the subject is. There's lots of things these days that are hot topics that you absolutely should avoid for a interview. So answer the question that was asked, and not much more than that. Um, if they want to know more, they'll ask more. There's a star format: situation, task, actions, and results. So when they ask you a question, say, "Well, this is the situation. I worked here. This is my job title." They might ask you, "Tell me about a time when you disagreed with your boss, but you had to stand your ground because you knew that it was the right thing to do and the best thing for the customer and the company." Um, and so, well, I worked here. This is my title. This is my relationship with my boss. He wanted me to do this thing. I felt like this was the right thing to do because I had a little bit more information and insight into it than they did. So I had to force my point. Initially, they weren't happy about it, but ultimately they understood and appreciated that I stood my ground. And until they understood where I was coming from, ultimately we made this. It was a big deal for the customer and a big win for the company, and everybody was happy in the long run. Perfect answer. Situation, tasking, actions, and results. If you can limit your answers to that type of format, then you'll win every time. When you get talking and going on and on, go down a rabbit hole, and is when the interviews go off track. So, um, at, just keep that in mind. Star format, super important to keeping everybody on track. Clean up your social media, super important. They will check your social media. When you go on LinkedIn, I'm going to share my screen here real quick. Okay, somebody give me a thumbs up, or unmute your mic. Tell me you can see my LinkedIn page.
I can see it.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So when you are on LinkedIn, all right, you come down here and go to your More button, and you hit Save to PDF. There we go. All right. And this is what you get. So when the hiring manager walks up to the recruiter and says, "Give me the top 5 applicants for this job," and so the recruiter is going to go to the computer and going to check to see who the top applicant tracking system says is the top 5 applicants based on word matching from their resume to the job description. And they're going to print off your resume. They're going to print off your application, maybe. And then they're going to go to LinkedIn and they're going to print this off. This is your LinkedIn resume. This is when they go check you on social media, they'll probably go and check your Facebook to see, how you spend your free time, what kind of stuff you feel comfortable putting out on social media. But this is your professional online digital resume. So does it have your name? Does it have a good, header section? Goes straight into summary information about your career, just like on your resume, and then straight into your work experience. And it can be long here because this is your total adult work life experience. But it should also have all your contact information. You get to select what are the top 3 skills on that show up here. So make sure that they're the ones that you want to be best known for in the job search. And then certifications and things like that. You want to make sure that they're on here as well. You get to choose all this stuff simply by how you format your profile. So, it's worth it to work with somebody to help you put all this together and make sure that you use it fully. So, clean up your social media. when you go into the job search, because chances are very good that they're going to check it, and you don't want to lose that dream job because you failed to do that. Answer call, text, email immediately. We talked about that. Apply for the jobs that you want and deserve. So, federal jobs and civilian jobs, if you match 75% of that job description, apply for it. The list of responsibilities is just what you're going to be doing when you get there. It doesn't mean you have to know all that stuff today when you're reading it. It just means that, when you get into that job, that's what your job is going to be. The requirements are what you got to have. They tell you got to have a degree, you got to have security clearance, you got to have these certifications. That's what you got to have. The responsibilities will come as you work in the ability to do them. So if 75% of that resume describes you and your abilities, go for it. You don't have to have 100% match. If you're applying for 50 jobs a week and you're doing it for 2, 3, 4 weeks, some of them will be a hit, some of them will be a miss. Most of them should be about right, and that's where the interviews come from. So go for it. And then the jobs that you deserve. I have had E5s come out of the military, 25 years old, 2 terms behind them, and feeling like they're ready to be senior executive managers, no degree, just because they did similar work out in the military world. And, you're just not ready for it. So be realistic about the level and types of jobs that you go after. Otherwise, you could be spinning your wheels and spend way too long in the job search. Any questions on any of that? Okay. Um, First question in the interview often is going to be, can you explain your resume or review your resume for us? And so you got to be able to talk confidently about your resume, about your skills, your experience. What do you do? Who are you? What do you bring to the table? What's the ideal job for you? You got to be able to talk about that in the interview and in the elevator. If you go to a job fair, which I encourage you to do even before you're ready to start putting out applications, go to job fairs. Get used to talking to recruiters. Get used to doing your elevator pitch, and explaining who you are and what you want to do, what kind of jobs you're looking for. Get used to talking to those folks. One thing about job fairs is it's okay to be nervous. I did 20 job fairs last year. I'll do 25 or so this year. I do a lot of job fairs. People come up in the job search and their hands are clammy and they're nervous, and sometimes they're desperate for a job and they've applied way too many places. And the problem is they have a terrible resume and they show up for everything, but they look terrible and aren't worried about the first impression and appearance. And you can smell the desperation on them. And that's a horrible place to be as a person, but it makes it difficult for the recruiter, because they may, under other circumstances, be a great fit for the job, but right now they just seem a little bit too chaotic to be a good choice for a company. So do those job fairs often. Follow the good advice of veteran service organizations. Have a job search mentor, coach that you work with to keep you in line, provide some accountability. But be ready to easily and confidently tell your story. Be ready to do that job fair, elevator pitch, and get out and do it as often as you can, as much as you can, just so that you get comfortable with the words. Talking to those kind of people. How are you a fit for this job, this company? In the interview, it's a level of familiarity with the company. You always do your research in advance of an interview, but B, the job description itself. Read it a couple more times before you get out of your car and go into the interview. Get to the interview location early so that you can breathe relax, bring yourself down a little bit, read your resume, review it a couple of times, have your materials with you for a good interview, familiarize yourself one last time with that job description, and then go in with your head up and confident that you're going to be the best person for that job and best person for that company. The question about why did you leave your last job? Well, if you're in the military, it's because you topped out, it was time to go, the military wasn't for you, whatever the right answer is okay. Honesty is best. If you're trying to tell an interviewer what you think they want to hear, they're going to smell it every time, it's not going to go well with you. So be honest. Be honest in your answers. If you don't know how to do a thing, if you don't have experience with a thing, if you don't think that under certain circumstances that's going to be good for you, be honest about it. You're there to see if you're a good fit for that company and if that company is a good fit for you. Why'd you leave your last job? Also, be honest, but be judicious in your wording. Ultimately, I didn't get along with my manager, and we decided it was the best thing for me to make a move. Or I felt like I was getting burned out. I felt like the manager was taking advantage of my good graces as someone who's willing to put in the extra time and take on added responsibility. They weren't willing to compensate me for it, and I was working way too many hours and neglecting my family. It was time for me to go. You know, totally reasonable answers. Are they 100% positive? No. Is it always going to be positive? No. But if it's honest, they'll appreciate the honest answer rather than trying to fluff them up and tell them what you think they want to hear. Not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there are things that will tank your resume from getting through an applicant tracking system. Don't use templates. Don't use all caps. Don't use PDFs. Send it as a Word doc, not as a PDF. Don't plagiarize from the job description or any job description because it's easy to run. A lot of applicant tracking systems will say, we'll give you a plagiarism score in the system. And section headings should be common section headings: summary, skills, experience, education, community service if you have it. Those are your section headings. The ATS is looking for those, and that's how it knows how to follow your information. So don't get creative. All caps is a big deal. Tables, boxes, cells, templates is a big deal. It's really best to just let somebody do it for you, like we do, or just plain Jane. Start typing at the top. Stay in a reasonable, acceptable format. Functional and hybrid resumes are not acceptable anymore. Don't use them. Anybody who tells you otherwise doesn't know what they're talking about. They're just not acceptable anymore. With this job market being what it is, recruiters want to know what you did, how you made a difference, and when you did it. And functional resume often has your greatest hits listed at the top of the resume, and it doesn't tell them anything about if you did it 15 years ago or 15 days ago. And your resume is your primary marketing document, but also your social media and how to what extent you've grown your network. So I think we've hammered resume and social media, all three of those enough, really. And then your job search tools: LinkedIn, Google Jobs. Google Jobs is my number one job search tool. If you don't know about Google Jobs, how to use Google Jobs, how to get into Google Jobs, and how to couple it with ChatGPT, then you definitely need to be talking to somebody because those two things will make it possible for you to put out 10 applications a day, working an 8-hour day, and taking an hour-long lunch break and not worrying about it at night or on the weekends. Those are your two primary tools: Google Jobs, ChatGPT, and then of course working with a good mentor organization, still serving vets or somebody like us. Never, ever, ever, ever pay for any veteran job search help or pay for a resume. That resume will 90% not get through applicant tracking systems, but it'll look great. And you'll pay for every update to it as well.